From 3D printed rocks with Lego built into them to a life-size e-bike that uses Technic pieces. These are 103 Lego things you've never seen before. Starting with a set that shipped with a working webcam in the year 2000. The Steven Spielberg Movie Maker set from Lego Studios wasn't just a regular movie-themed set. It came with an actual USB webcam, stop-motion editing software, a director's chair, and a clapperboard. You filmed your Lego movies, added special effects, and emailed them to your friends. In 2000! The set retailed at $180. And Steven Spielberg himself was involved enough that he donated his royalties from it to charity. This was super innovative for the time, but somehow the theme just quietly disappeared. But if you think that's forgotten, try asking someone about Throwbots. It was also known as Slizer in Europe, and it was a theme from 1999 where every single figure had spring-loaded arms that threw collectible discs. They weren't even sold in regular boxes either. They came in plastic canisters like Bionicle. The disc-throwing mechanism didn't actually work that well, which probably explains why it turned into Bionicle 2 years later. But something most people don't realize changed is the skeleton minifigure, unless you're a true Lego fan. The original one from 1995 had ball and socket shoulder joints, which meant the arms could rotate in any direction. They were known as floppy arms, and they were completely posable, which is honestly way cooler than the modern day arms. In 2014, Lego retired this version and redesigned it to have the fixed bent arm version every other minifigure has. So you physically can't get the same poses anymore. But did you know Lego was experimenting with tech all the way back in 2002? Spybotics was a Mindstorm sub-theme that actually never made it out of that year. Lego only made 4 sets for the theme, and they were all color-coded, programmable robots that had an IR trans receiver, a remote, and a CD-ROM. The software had 10 built-in missions for builders to complete, and you could download more from the official website. Each set was $60 retail, but after the theme retired, not only did the website cease to exist, but 23 years later, the sets are worth almost $650 combined. But as wild as that is, it's nothing compared to what Lego was doing with Technic in the mid-90s. From 1996 to 1997, there were Technic sets that had real fiber optic cables, which I've talked about before. But what I didn't mention was the spinning LED brick that lit those cables. The problem was that sourcing those fiber optic components cost Lego more than the entire retail price of the sets. And since they were taking a loss and didn't want to raise prices, they just got rid of the theme altogether. But this wasn't a one-time mistake. The exact same problem happened with the Technic Micro Motor. This thing was only 4 studs big, and it powered things like satellite deployment arms and moving space shuttle components. And just like the fiber optics, Lego was making it at a price that was higher than the full price of the sets it shipped in. Lego was bleeding money on both of these pieces, and nobody even knew about it until Mark Stafford told everyone on Reddit. But moving on from financial disasters, there's a space theme from 2001 that old Lego fans love, but always forget the details of, and that's life on Mars. The thing people always forget is that it was the only space sub-theme in Lego history where nobody was trying to shoot anyone. The humans showed up on Mars, the Martians met them, and everyone just coexisted. No combat, no good guys versus bad guys, nothing. On top of that, life on Mars is the reason sand colors even exist. Colors like sand red, sand green, and sand purple all come from this theme. So technically, a piece of it is still alive today, even though it never made it past a year. And life on Mars wasn't the only space sub-theme that did something unique for a short time. Every ship in the Insectoids theme from 1998 was designed to look like an insect, and it wasn't for no reason. According to the lore, the ships themselves were called Insectoids, and they were made by aliens called Zotac Hypaxians so they could survive underground. Some of the smaller ones don't look that good, but bigger ones look super sick, like the Space Spider, the Sonic Stinger, and the Cosmic Creeper. Some of the sets even had lights and sounds, like the Arachnoid Starbase. However, none of this saved the theme from being sucked into the void of forgotten LEGO. But space wasn't the only place LEGO made one-time waves that nobody talks about. In 2005, LEGO released a Vikings theme. Actual Nordic warriors with longships, sea serpents, and giant stone fortresses. It wasn't even just a European release. It went worldwide after it made enough money. The sets had massive creature models like sea serpents and dragons at a scale LEGO hadn't really figured out yet, which is probably why it retired so fast. It got 7 sets and 27 minifigs in the year it was around, which isn't that bad. But Vikings isn't even the most forgotten LEGO theme. That title probably goes to Model Team, which ran from 1986 to 1999. Now, because of how long it was around, you might think this theme is pretty well remembered, but because of all of the other car themes that have come out, it gets completely overshadowed. The theme's concept was medium-sized, highly detailed LEGO cars with working steering and realistic details built at around 1 to 15 scale. And the thing is, there were 0 minifigures. The sets just existed to be realistic car models for adults, and it was over a decade before Creator Expert was even a thing. Model Team is literally the direct ancestor of everything AFOL, and most fans today don't even know it existed. But if you want a theme that was ahead of its time in a completely different way, Homemaker ran from 1971 to 1982, and honestly didn't even feel like LEGO in the beginning. For the first 3 years, the sets were just furniture. Kitchens, living rooms, nurseries, all buildable, fully tiled, and with no figures at all. The 1973 catalog literally told you to use your own dolls. Then in 1974, LEGO finally added what they called maxi figures. These big figures with movable arms, interchangeable hair, and different faceplates. After this, Homemaker got like 60 more sets, but no one really talks about it unless they're covering the history of minifigures. Which actually brings up something worth pointing out about them. For the first 22 years they existed, the back of every single minifigure torso was completely blank. The first minifigures with back-printed torsos didn't show up until mid-2000 in the sports football sets. And the Steven Spielberg set I talked about earlier got them too. But before 2000, if you turned any minifigure around, there was nothing there. But there's also a whole forgotten history of LEGO capes. The first one showed up in 1984 as a tiny plastic piece that attached at the neck. And from the front, you couldn't even tell it was there because it was too small to see. The only time this cape piece was ever worn forwards was in set 6040, the blacksmith shop. But other than that, you'd never know it was there from the front. But that all changed in 1993 because the Dragon Master from the Dragon Knight's Castle sub-theme got the first ever fabric cape, and it was a cloth piece with a printed green dragon on it. This was also the first non-plastic element in a regular system LEGO set, and once it was out there, it spread. The same material got used for sails, flags, and more capes across multiple themes. It was a genuine turning point in how LEGO made accessories. But even after all that, LEGO thought they still hadn't quite nailed it, because now there are technically 3 different cape materials, and none of them are better than that original cloth. The plastic cape before it was too unrealistic, the lighter papery version that replaced the cloth creases easily and didn't flow right, and the rubber cape introduced in 2021 can't be printed on and bunches at the neck. 3 different materials across 40 years, and the one that actually worked the best is the hardest one to find. This thing is pretty buried, and LEGO's also done a pretty good job of burying entire themes that most fans pretend never existed. From 2003 to 2006, they made over 90 sets of clipped-together jewelry, hair clips, picture frames, and pencil cases under the Click-Its theme. They made 150 new molds and 49 colors, and 6 of these colors have never been in any other theme besides Click-Its. The pieces were technically compatible with LEGO, they just couldn't really build anything. The funny ending to this story is that LEGO basically revived the whole concept in 2020 as dots, and people absolutely loved it. So maybe Clickets was just 17 years too early. But there's a certain Technic piece with a much sadder story, the pneumatic air tank from 1997. The whole point of it was to act like a battery for the compressed air system. You'd pump it full by hand and then run your pneumatics off the stored pressure without having to keep pumping. LEGO made 5 different versions between 1997 and 1998, and even though one of them made it all the way to 2016, it was only ever in 12 sets. The others were only in 1 to 3 sets, and because of how good this piece was, Technic fans literally beg LEGO to bring it back all the time. LEGO was super innovative in the late 90s and early 2000s, and it's super obvious with a piece like this air tank, but it's also obvious in the sports theme. In the early 2000s, LEGO was trying to do something they'd never done before. Make functional sports sets so kids could play actual games with them. The NBA line from 2003 to 2004 actually licensed real NBA players. Kobe, Shaq, Allen Iverson, and a bunch of others all got real minifigures. But the wild part is what it took just to make them hold a basketball. Brickpedia confirms that the arm mold alone needed a team of 4 designers and 6 engineers, and took an entire year to develop. The figures also had spring-loaded legs and could reverse slam dunk. An entire year for an arm mold is absolutely insane. But basketball wasn't even the most elaborate play feature in the sports theme. The soccer sub-theme from 2000 to 2004 had wind-up motor mechanisms that physically launched a minifigure's leg to kick a tiny ball. Not a stud shooter, not a flick fire, an actual spring-loaded kick. The Championship Challenge set from 2000 is the best example of it, and the minifigures had completely unique leg and body molds just so they could do this one play feature. What most people also don't remember is just how big the marketing was around this sub-theme. In 2002, to tie into the World Cup, co-hosted by Japan and South Korea, LEGO soccer sets were sold as Coca-Cola promotional packs in Japan. At the exact same time, Kabaya, a Japanese candy brand, was bundling small LEGO soccer polybags with candy in them. To this day, this is one of LEGO's biggest and most elaborate collabs ever, and you never see people talking about it. But then there was the hockey sub-theme, which was somehow the most forgotten of all 3. LEGO Hockey in 2003 had real NHL branding, and the Canadian national team was there too. But just like basketball and soccer, the play feature is what made it stand out. There was a shooting mechanic where you could cock the minifigure stick back and release it to shoot a puck across the ice. The theme only ran for a year with both the basketball and soccer sub-themes, but then out of nowhere, the entire operation just stopped. And since 2007, LEGO hasn't made another play feature this cool. But while I'm talking about nostalgic play features, LEGO used to do something with castle sets that was completely different from anything they do today. Before flick fire missiles, castle and western sets had walls that were designed to break apart when you hit them. At first, people thought this was an accident, but they were deliberately less supportive at certain points, so the wall would break. The Western Sheriff's Lockup from 1996 even had a spring-loaded cell wall that was triggered by a dynamite tile. And right alongside that is something pirate fans already know. The original Black Seas Barracuda from 1989 had spring-loaded cannons. You loaded ammo into the barrel, pressed down, and it fired across the entire room. Reviewers still call them the best part of the set, but unfortunately, LEGO had to get rid of them in the US, and the international version kept them. But since then, every pirate ship slowly got decorative cannons, then stud shooters, and now nothing that actually fires a cannonball. So you can only find that specific mechanism in vintage pirate sets. Before 2006, castle sets also had real lever action catapults. You pulled the arm back, loaded it up, and fired away. The flick fire missile came out in 2006, and it spread through every action theme by about 2008, replacing literally every single one of those mechanics with flick fire instead. The community has been complaining about flick fires basically ever since, and honestly, I can't blame them. Nothing about a flick fire feels as satisfying as those OG catapults and cannons. But this last thing is so simple that it doesn't even make sense that it's gone. The string winch on classic town and Technic crane sets. These things were all over the place back in the day, and people loved how interactive they are. You turned a hand crank and a hook on a real string would go up or down really smoothly. It's not complicated at all, but the tactile feel of it is something modern Lego cranes completely lost. Now they simulate it with Technic gears moving a hook up a fixed arm with no string tension whatsoever. You can still find loads of these old winches on Bricklink, but when's the last time you've seen them in an actual set? It's probably been a really long time. Something else you never see are secret messages in Lego, and there are actually a ton of them. Starting with the secret message on Lego's shipping boxes. If you've ever ordered something from Lego online, you probably noticed that the box it comes in is very plain, and Lego actually tells you why, but only if you look at the right part of the box. It says that they're plain because a lot of people buy gifts from Lego, so they keep them plain to help keep the secret. I guess enough people got their Christmas spoiled that Lego had to do something about it. But what about actual sets? The first one I'll talk about is the Slytherin House banner set from 2022. This one has a hidden compartment inside the banner, which by itself is already a cool detail. But if you actually look inside the compartment, there's a message written in there that says Tom Riddle was here. The coolest part though is that you can't see it from every angle. It's written on 3D paper, so if you don't look at it correctly, you won't see it at all. Since there aren't that many people who know Tom Riddle was Voldemort and that he was in Slytherin, it makes sense why Lego hid it this way. But Harry Potter isn't the only theme where Lego hid something like this. In the Wednesday and Enid's dorm room set from 2023, there's a small printed tile on a book spine that just says hide. At first, it looks like a random book title, but Hyde is actually the name for the creature alter ego of the show's main villain, Laurel Gates. So Lego put a spoiler for the big villain of the show on the spine of a book. But since most people buying this set have seen the show, it probably didn't spoil that many people. Now, those are both pretty dark messages, but the one hiding in the corner garage modular set is a lot funnier. One of the shop windows says Dr. Jones Animal Care, no snakes. And this is actually a reference to Indiana Jones. Indy has a PhD in archaeology, so he is technically a doctor. But the important thing here is that he hates snakes, so of course he'd never let them in his vet clinic. But this next message is one of the weirdest ones ever. In the Ninjago City Garden set from 2021, there's a sticker that says A05 renovation, which sounds kind of weird, but we all probably looked right past it. But A05 is actually Lego's internal retirement code. It's the code they give to pieces when they're about to be discontinued and pulled from future sets. I don't even know how people were able to figure this one out, but the weirder thing here is why the designers even did it. But designers also hide their own signatures in sets. In the Office set from 2022, there's a certificate of authenticity above the reception desk with 3 separate sets of initials, but only one of them is for the designer. The first one stands for Jai Jai Lewis, who made the set and passed Lego's review on Lego Ideas. Apparently, the other 2 sets are for the social media pages that helped him get 10,000 supporters, but I have no idea what they actually are. However, the most impressive designer signature is in the World Map set from 2021. Designer Fiorella Groves built the Chinese character Li, which is her middle name, into the Pacific Ocean. She only had 2 dimensions, 1x1 studs, and colors, and somehow she pulled off one of the best signatures in Lego. She teased it in a designer video, but never said what it was or where it was, but fans solved it in like 24 hours. So even though it was really cool, it was still pretty easy to find. Now, this next one isn't a direct message, but it's definitely intentional. The buildable C-3PO set from 2024 has exactly 1,138 pieces, and that number isn't random. It's a reference to THX-1138, George Lucas's first feature film, which became became a recurring Easter egg hidden throughout Star Wars. If you thought this number was hard to recognize, wait until you see what's inside the X-Men X-Mansion set. The Danger Room is covered in stickers that look like weapon and equipment codes, but someone recognized that every single one is actually a reference. E13122 is Earth 13122, which is the LEGO Marvel Universe. E92131 is Earth 92131, the universe for the X-Men animated series. UX266 is Uncanny X-Men number 266, which is the issue where Gambit first showed up. And 141965 refers to X-Men number 141, which is the Days of Future Past storyline. It's definitely not the easiest thing to figure out, but you have to know a whole other language to recognize the message in the Evolution of STEM set. Along the edge of the book, there are white tiles built as dots and dashes in Morse code, and they spell out STEM. It's physically built into the model, and even though the message isn't anything crazy, when else have you seen Morse code in LEGO? But it's not just sets. LEGO hides messages in video games too. In the LEGO Party video game, there's one hidden inside the Slide Hustle minigame. Players who found and decoded it got a weird sequence of characters, and entering that sequence unlocked the Galaxy Patrol minifigure in the game. This guy was clearly not easy to unlock. But speaking of things that are hard to find, Bionicle ran one of the longest secret message systems in LEGO history. From 2003 to 2010, every Bionicle canister and set packaging had a Kanoka code printed on it. You entered them on Bionicle.com, and they unlocked story content, games, and exclusive information about the Bionicle universe that you couldn't get anywhere else. To this day, people still talk about how crazy this was, but Bionicle references kept showing up way after the theme ended. In the Ninjago City Docks set from 2018, there are two maps inside the build. One shows the island of Ninjago, which makes total sense, obviously. But the other one shows Mata Nui, the island from Bionicle, and it's actually labeled in the Mandarin alphabet, which is Bionicle's own language. There's also a Bionicle reference hiding in the City Passenger Airplane set from 2020. One of the stickers shows a list of departures, and one of the destinations is VYN, which stands for Voya Nui, an island from Bionicle. But how do I know this? Because there's a second sticker showing a plane landing on that island. So these two are very obviously linked. But more recently, LEGO's own Instagram account hid a Bionicle message on their page. In a post about the retro phone set, the third slide showed the inside of the phone with red and green lights in the background. Literally no one thought anything of this except for one commenter who started digging into it to see what they could find. They noticed that the lights kind of looked like binary code, and after filling in the gaps covered by the speech bubble, they realized that they were right, and the message was the word Bionicle. Now, this probably means absolutely nothing for the theme, but it's cool to see that LEGO's still keeping the name alive. However, this isn't the only time LEGO hid a message with binary code. The official Ninjago promo poster for the 2014 rebooted season had what looked like binary code along the border. Fans decoded it and it spelled Nindroid, which was the name of the android villain faction in that season. But the binary rabbit hole still goes deeper. The robot programmer minifigure from CMF Series 19 has binary code printed on the shirt, but the way you decode it matters. You have to translate it as an 8-bit binary into ASC2 to find the real message. And when you do, it spells LEGO. Usually when you're decoding binary, you only have to do it once, but thanks to this person on Reddit, we found out it actually had 2 layers. But the most personal hidden messages in this video are in the LEGO Star Wars Skywalker Saga video game. When a character gets introduced, their name shows up on screen in English, with Aurebesh text underneath. But these aren't just translations of their names. Every single one is a joke. Darth Vader says loves the dark side, hates sand. Kylo Ren says serious daddy issues. Count Dooku says never loses his head. Palpatine says also known as the Senate. Jango Fett says donor for the clone army, which is crazy. And Darth Maul says red dude with a bad attitude. Out of all the Easter eggs in the Skywalker saga, these are by far the funniest. But this next secret message had some Minecraft fans pretty confused. The end battle set came with a brick that had a really long code on it, and some people on Reddit genuinely didn't know what they were looking at. What they didn't know was that this was a redeemable code for Minecraft Bedrock, which gave you the minifigure in the set as a skin in-game. Now, these messages are sick, but did you know that LEGO even hides them using ancient languages? They mainly use hieroglyphs and runes, so I'll start with runes. The Heroica fantasy board games come with a shield piece covered in runic writing. And unlike a lot of fantasy-looking LEGO scripts that are just decoration, this one actually says something. If you decode it, it spells Heroica 3 times. Not very special. But there's a Harry Potter rune tile that hides something a lot more specific. The main inscription says LEGO, and the smaller writing says Leg Got, which translates to play well. For anyone who doesn't know, Leg Got is the Danish phrase that LEGO's name originally came from, and for some reason they decided to hide it in runes in a Harry Potter set. It makes absolutely no sense, but in the Mines of Moria set from the Lord of the Rings, the inscription on Balin's tomb isn't random. It uses Tolkien dwarvish runes and matches the real tomb inscription from the Fellowship of the Ring. So if you know Tolkien's rune system, you can read it. It's one of the more accurate pieces of ancient writing LEGO has ever put in a set, but this same one has 2 more runic messages, one of which is above one of the doors, and this one is very different. If you read it using the Dwarf Runes keyboard layout instead of Tolkien's actual rune values, it says Diordi was here. Basically, someone on the design team left their own name hidden in the Mines of Moria in Dwarf Runes, and made it pretty difficult to decode. But the third message is a smaller inscription that says Orcs, with a tally mark next to it. Moria doesn't just have serious lore, it also has what looks like a kill counter for orcs. That's pretty much it for runes, so now it's time for hieroglyphs. The LEGO Adventurers Egypt set used real-looking hieroglyphs in a lot of their sets. Most of them don't seem to say anything in particular, but there's one set that might say KHNWM, which could be an attempt at spelling Khnum, an Egyptian god. The article that found this says it's either a coincidence or a typo, so there's no real way to be sure. But Pharaoh's Quest had one of LEGO's most creative hidden messages. The hieroglyphs were redesigned, so every symbol was an object from LEGO. LEGO even released a decoder for the system, and the whole thing was built around a fan puzzle that unlocked Professor Archibald Hale's diary on a special website. This entire thing has so much lore and is so complicated that it's honestly hard to follow. But in 2015, the Scooby-Doo Mummy Museum mystery set showed up with the same exact LEGO-ified hieroglyphs from Pharaoh's Quest. LEGO just took the entire fake ancient writing system from one theme and reused it in a completely different one 4 years later. You'd think this would be it, but it happened again in the 2020 Haunted House set, which already had a bunch of Adventurers references in it. One of the obelisks in the set uses one of the same hieroglyphic inscriptions. This one at least makes sense, since this language was in Adventurers first, but the newer Indiana Jones sets take a different approach, hiding actual movie references in the hieroglyphs. In the Escape from the Lost Tomb set, the hieroglyphs have the famous C-3PO and R2-D2 carvings from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the Sankara stones from the Temple of Doom with a crystal skull. Now, obviously, these aren't based on real hieroglyphs, so it's just kind of a fun reference. But the Pyramid of Giza set was not messing around. The set includes a name plaque in hieroglyphs that says Akhet Khufu, which means the horizon of Khufu. And this isn't just a guess. The person who wrote this article knows a lot about ancient languages, and according to them, this is exactly how this name would be written in ancient Egypt. So shout out LEGO for being super accurate. They actually like hieroglyphs more than you think, because they made a line of buildable pens called the LEGO Writing System, and one of them was hieroglyph themed. It came with an alphabet decoder sheet, so kids could write in the system. Real Egyptian hieroglyphs don't actually work as a simple alphabet, but LEGO turned them into one anyway, and packaged it as a puzzle. It's not 100% accurate like the one in the Giza set, but it's still really sick. Something I bet you've never heard of, though, is that LEGO changes certain items around the world. The The first thing worth knowing is that back in 2019, when LEGO first started releasing Chinese New Year sets, they weren't available anywhere outside of East Asia. If you lived in the US, the UK, Australia, anywhere that wasn't East Asia, you just couldn't buy them. And the community's reaction was pretty bad. People were genuinely upset, and the crazy part is that LEGO actually listened. By May of 2019, they reversed the policy and started selling the sets to the whole world. But that wasn't the only time China got something nobody else did. In January of 2021, LEGO ran a gift with purchase promotion in their Chinese stores. And to get it, you had to spend the equivalent of over $300 in a single order. Not only was this promotion only in China, but the money threshold was higher than basically anything LEGO was doing in other countries at the same time. So it wasn't just exclusive, it was expensive exclusive. But then there's the story of LEGO Life. LEGO Life was a social media app that LEGO made so people could share their LEGO builds all over the world. In every other country, it's LEGO Life. But in China, the app doesn't even exist. LEGO had to partner with Tencent and build a completely different app from scratch to satisfy China's laws. And LEGO's own CEO confirmed this publicly, so it's 100% true. China having its own version of an app is one thing, but in the 1970s, Italy got its own version of the actual brick. LEGO made a completely separate system called Minitalia, which was only sold in Italy. And if you didn't know what you were looking at, you'd probably think it was a knockoff. The bricks used a different, lower quality plastic than standard LEGO, HIPS instead of ABS. They also had an X-shaped underside instead of the normal tube, and didn't have the LEGO logo on them anywhere. That last part is why so many of them got thrown away. Parents and kids assumed they were cheap fakes and didn't keep them. LEGO made them like this so they could sell bricks to Italy for cheaper, but the result was a version of their own product that looked fake. But Italy isn't even the only country where this happened. Japan had almost the exact same thing happening at the same time. From 1970 to 1978, LEGO made a line called Olo exclusively for the Japanese market. These were pretty much identical to Minitalia bricks, but they used the higher quality ABS plastic instead, and they were reportedly sold in rural areas while regular LEGO was sold in major cities like Tokyo. So Japan had this weird two-tier system, where people who lived in big cities got real LEGO, and people who lived in small towns didn't. But if you thought these bricks were weird, how about ones that are 3D printed into fake rocks? This was done by Greg Pechkovsky all the way back in 2012. And his idea was that he wanted to make LEGO graffiti you could actually touch. So he'd find architecture that was damaged, take a bunch of pictures of it, put it in a 3D software, and make a LEGO prosthetic. But Olo bricks weren't the only thing Japan got that no one else did. From 1997 to 2004, a Japanese candy company called Kabaya partnered with LEGO to sell miniature sets packaged inside boxes of candy. They sold sets from Bionicle, Rock Raiders, Life on Mars, Ninja, Star Wars, and more. And they were all sold in candy wrappers. Some of these even had exclusive content that never showed up anywhere else. The Rock Raiders Kabaya 4-pack came with a Chief minifigure that's never been in any other LEGO product anywhere. The only way to get him was to buy Japanese candy in the early 2000s. But while Japan was getting exclusive candy sets, Europe and America were getting the same sets with completely different lore behind them. In 1999, LEGO released a theme called Slicers in Europe. All 8 characters lived on the same planet, and they were split into different biomes. But in the US and Canada, the exact same sets were sold as Throwbots, and in this version, each character lived on their own separate planet. There were different character names, different backstories, different box art, all of it was different. Fire became Torch, Sub became Scuba, Amazon became Jungle, even the illustrations were different. Enemies in the Throwbots version had their faces and eyes removed compared to the Slicer versions. American and European kids in 1999 were playing with the exact same toys, but at the same time, everything about them was completely different, and no one even knew it. But the 12-volt electric train era is a big one, because American LEGO fans never got it at all, and they're still mad about it. The 12-volt train system ran from 1969 to 1991, and was a Europe exclusive the entire time. Sets like the Intercity Train, the High-Speed Express, none of them were ever sold in American stores. The Blue Track version was even more exclusive, only being available in continental Europe, not even the UK or Australia. The reason comes down to LEGO's licensing agreement with Samsonite, who was manufacturing LEGO products for North America at the time. After that arrangement ended in the early 1970s, train sales in the US essentially stopped until 1980, when a limited 4.5-volt line popped up. The 12-volt system, which needed special track conductors, never made the jump. So there's a whole era of LEGO trains that an entire continent just never experienced. But even European buyers weren't all getting the same train experience, because from 1977 through the mid-1980s, LEGO train sets came with sticker sheets that had the logos of different European railway companies. DB for Germany, SNCF for France, OBB for Austria, the list goes on. The box art always showed the German DB stickers applied by default, but if you bought your train set in Finland, you got Finnish railway stickers, Switzerland got Swiss ones, and every other country got their corresponding logo. It's the only time in LEGO history where the decoration of a set changed based on where you bought it. Now, I mentioned Samsonite earlier, and because of them, the Canadian LEGO situation is genuinely its own chapter in LEGO history. From 1962 to 1990, Canadians buying LEGO were buying sets manufactured by Samsonite under a license, and these sets weren't always identical to what the rest of the world was getting. Sometimes the parts were slightly different, sets were in blister packs instead of boxes, and everything had French and English text because of Canadian language laws. So for almost 30 years, Canadian kids were building with a local version of LEGO that was basically the same, but technically different. And because Canada was stuck with Samsonite, it got left behind when updates hit. In 1986, the rest of the world switched from 9-stud road plates to 7-stud road plates with a bike lane. But Canada kept the 9-stud road plates until 1989, 3 years after everyone else switched. Even after the Samsonite situation got sorted out, the US still wasn't getting the same LEGO experience as Europe. From roughly 1970 to 1980, the same exact set was sold with a completely different number in the US versus Europe. The London bus was set 384 in Europe and 760 in the US. Same bus, same parts, different number on the box. LEGO never officially explained why, and it's caused decades of confusion for collectors trying to catalog these things. And at the same time, while the rest of the world was buying Technic, Americans were buying something called Expert Builder. Every other market got the Technic branding, but the US got Expert Builder, and kept it well into the mid-80s before LEGO finally gave up and changed it to Technic. If you grew up in the US during that era and someone mentioned Technic, you might not have even known what they were talking about. But when Bionicle launched in 2001, European sets came with mini CDs that had game content on them. People in America didn't get anything like this for most of the early days of Bionicle. The Toa Metru sets from 2004 all had character-specific promo CDs in their European canisters, with no US equivalent. Since then, collectors have documented the differences at an obsessive level of detail. Different item numbers on European versus US canisters, black and white versus color disc variants, and which specific characters got CDs in which markets. Even the Bionicle collectible mask packs from 2001 were different depending on where you bought them. North America got set 8525, which came in a box, but the rest of the world got set 8530, which came in a poly bag. Same masks, different set numbers, different packaging. It's only right though. After that whole fiasco with the CDs, we needed something cool that other people weren't gonna get. But the changes with Bionicles still aren't done. LEGO managed to tell the same story in the complete wrong order depending on which continent you lived in. The 2005 wave had heroes, the Toa Hordica, and villains, the Viscerac. In North America, the Toa Hordica were introduced in the winter, and the Viscerac came out in the summer. But in Europe and Asia, it was flipped. Viscerac came in winter, and Toa Hordica came in summer. So European kids met the villains before they'd been introduced to the heroes they were fighting. At least this time, the story was the same. But that same year, the Toa Haga figures, Norik and Iruini, were released in stores in Europe in the winter of 2005. In the US, they were only available as a Walmart exclusive special edition Guardian Toa bonus pack. So one part of the world could walk into any store and buy them, while the other had to go to Walmart specifically or completely miss out. But the thing is, Knights Kingdom 2 did something similar. The action figures, like set 8773, came with game cards in North America. The European version of the same figure came without cards. But then, Target stores in North America got a secret third variant, with 6 cards instead of the standard 3. But at least this was for a random theme no one remembers, right? Well, yes, but LEGO did it with Ninjago too. The Ninjago trading card game launched in 2016 through a company called Blue Ocean, and it's been running across Europe, Brazil, and Singapore ever since. Notice anything? Yeah, it's never been available in the United States or Canada. There are more than 10 series with hundreds of different cards, and American Ninjago fans have just never had access to it. But even within Europe, it wasn't consistent. The UK dropped it after Series 3, while Hungary kept getting English versions even after the UK stopped getting them. Certain limited edition cards were only distributed through specific products in specific countries. It's a whole complicated mess that honestly isn't even worth trying to figure out. But the LEGO architecture theme has a weird origin story that most people haven't heard. When Adam Reed Tucker launched the first architecture sets in 2008, the Sears Tower and the John Hancock Center, they were sold exclusively at the gift shops of those actual buildings in Chicago. You had to physically visit the John Hancock Center or the Sears Tower depending on which set you wanted. That's a level of location-based exclusivity that no one besides LEGO themselves even gets, like the sets in the LEGO house. And speaking of LEGO house, during COVID, LEGO put some of the house sets for sale online, but for some reason, they weren't available for everyone. The architecture set was available across Europe. The Tree of Creativity and the Dinosaurs sets were only in Denmark, the UK, and Ireland, because those were the only countries where the packaging met local regulation requirements. And get this, the US and Australia got nothing. Nothing? This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to buy sets for retail price online that you can only get in person in one place. And for some reason, LEGO left out 2 gigantic markets. The problem is, this kind of thing goes all the way back to 1967. Set 080 was a town and train hybrid set that you could buy at any regular toy store in Europe. But in the US, the same exact set was sold exclusively at FAO Schwarz, the most expensive luxury toy store in America at the time. They even changed the name to the Ambassador set, when literally everything about them was the same. But in America, you had to be rich to buy it. And then there's the one that genuinely baffles people when they hear it. The LEGO Architecture White House set, released in 2020, launched in Europe and Asia before it was released in America. A set of the literal White House was available in Germany 2 months before you could buy it in the States. And apparently, the reason was because factories in Mexico were closing down due to COVID. Honestly, I hate how good of an excuse this is, because it really does make sense. But the brick architect said it best. It was a misguided decision to release a model featuring an iconic US landmark to a domestic audience 2 months later than it was released in Europe and Asia. But to finish the video, let me tell you about the Royal Guard minifigure. I think we can all agree that this is a cool minifigure, but if you want it, you have to go to Hamley's toy store in London to buy it. You literally can't get it anywhere else in the world unless you pay the resale price. Oh, and another thing, it hasn't been sold there since 2018, so you have to buy resale whether you like it or not. And another thing people really don't like is that LEGO removed the magnets from old minifigures. LEGO used to sell these magnet sets where you could stick minifigures to your fridge or locker. And the cool part was that you could actually remove the minifigure from the magnetic base. So if you wanted to collect rare minifigures, you could just buy the magnet set and pop them off. It was perfect. But then in 2011, LEGO started permanently gluing all of the minifigures to their bases. And I'm not just talking about a little bit of glue. They were gluing the torsos to the legs too, so you literally couldn't take them apart at all. Fans were furious, and I mean, can you blame them? The whole point of buying these was to get the minifigures, and now they were just stuck to a magnet forever. The reason this happened was apparently due to licensing issues with Star Wars, which doesn't make it any less frustrating. But let me show you something super sick that's been gone for way longer. From 1986 to 1998, LEGO had this thing called the 9-volt system, and it was honestly kind of insane. You'd have a battery box and then these special conductive bricks that had metal lining inside of them. And when you connected them all together, they'd make an actual circuit. No wires, no complicated setup, just bricks that conducted electricity. And then you could add light bricks or sound bricks to make sirens, lights, and sounds. The problem was that these systems were bulky and complicated, especially for younger kids, so LEGO discontinued them. But here's the thing, they actually tried a simpler version back in 2019 with some city sets, and people loved it. It just goes to show that sometimes the old features really were better, even if they were more complex. Now, if you've been building LEGO for a while, you probably remember those raised base plates that used to come with certain sets. I'm talking about the ones with built-in terrain, craters, road patterns, all of that. Castle sets had base plates with rocky textures, city sets had roads already printed on them, and space sets had those awesome crater base plates that you could use as ramps. They gave your builds instant scale and made everything feel more complete right out of the box. But LEGO phased them out because of cost, packaging, size, and the fact that they were pretty fragile and could crack if you weren't careful. Now we're stuck with either flat plates or having to build roads ourselves, which takes way more time and pieces. But the worst part, those old crater base plates from Classic Space sell for like $35 to $40 each on the secondhand market. So even if you wanted in on the action, you'd have to pay a lot of money. Speaking of classic themes, let me tell you about something in the castle theme that gave it way more life. LEGO used to include these massive pre-molded pieces that let you build rock formations really easily. People called them burps, which stands for big, ugly rock pieces. And even though the name sounds bad, they were actually super useful and loved. You could snap them together and have a full wall around your castle in minutes, instead of spending an hour building it brick by brick. But LEGO discontinued them because they wanted to shift toward fully brick-built structures for better play value. And I get it, building everything from scratch does give you more flexibility and lets you customize your builds. But at the same time, those burps were iconic, and a lot of people miss being able to throw together a castle that quickly. But castle wasn't the only theme that lost something important. Pirate ships used to come with real fabric sails that had printed designs on them, and they made the ships feel so much more authentic and premium. Like, you'd open the box and see this actual cloth sail, and it just felt special. But these were gradually replaced with plastic sails or brick-built alternatives, and honestly, they're just not the same. The original cloth sails are now expensive collector's items, and some fans have even started making DIY replacements because they miss them so much and can't afford the real ones. I don't know about you, but I'd rather have a real fabric sail than a plastic one any day of the week. Going back to castle for a minute though, there's one more thing I have to mention. These large round shields with a single center stud that you'd see in sets like the 6030 catapult were fan favorites for castle builds. They were simple, they looked great, and you could attach them to minifigures or build them into walls, but they were phased out for more complex printed designs or just regular shields. And sure, the new shields have more detail, but there was something really satisfying about those simple round shields that you just don't get anymore. Oh, and speaking of that catapult set, let me tell you about another thing that's changed. Old LEGO castle sets had functional catapults that could fling projectiles across an entire room. The catapult set from 1984 had this powerful Technic-based mechanism that could launch things with serious force. But modern catapults are way weaker, or they've been replaced by stud shooters, which are fine, I guess, but they're just not as satisfying. There's something about pulling peeling back a catapult arm and watching something fly across the room that stud shooters just can't replicate. But at least catapults are still around in some way. Flick fire missiles, on the other hand, are basically gone. These were introduced in 2006, and they were super simple. You would just flick them with your finger, and they'd shoot out. They weren't as reliable as spring-loaded shooters, but they were way more fun to use. While they're still technically available in some sets, they've mostly been replaced by those spring-loaded shooters and stud shooters, since they're more consistent. Sometimes I feel like LEGO prioritizes function over fun, and this is a perfect example of that. Now, this next feature being removed does kind of make sense, but is still definitely sad. LEGO trains used to connect with magnetic couplers, which was awesome because you could easily attach and detach cars. But small magnets became a safety hazard, especially for younger kids who might swallow them. So in 2005, LEGO introduced this huge sealed buffer beam to keep magnets in trains to make them safer. And now you have to use different connection methods that just aren't as convenient. I totally understand why they did it, but man, those magnetic couplers were so easy to use. But if you think losing train magnets is bad, let me tell you about something that's even worse. From 1987 to 1994, LEGO made 3 legendary monorail sets with futuristic elevated trains and automatic switching tracks. These things were incredible, and people absolutely loved them. But here's the thing. Single pieces of track now sell for $20 or more on the secondhand market, and LEGO has said that the molds are gone and they won't be coming back, despite massive demand. There have been multiple LEGO Ideas projects trying to bring the monorail back, and people have even started 3D printing replacement tracks because the demand is so high. But LEGO just won't do it, and honestly, it's one of the most requested features that LEGO refuses to bring back. But another one is the power function system. This ran from 2007 to 2018, and it was super reliable and standardized. You had motors, lights, and simple plug-and-play connectors that just worked. But it got replaced by Powered Up in 2018, which uses Bluetooth and is supposedly more advanced. The problem is that Powered Up is way more expensive and way more complex to set up. And sure, Bluetooth is cool and all, but sometimes you just want something simple that works without having to connect it to an app or worry about battery life. Power Functions was perfect for that, and a lot of people still prefer it over Powered Up, but at least motors are still around, because pneumatic systems, on the other hand, are basically extinct. LEGO Technic used to have working pneumatic systems with air pumps, cylinders, and hoses that created realistic hydraulic motion. There were 2 generations of this, Generation 1 from 1984 to 1989, and Generation 2 from 1989 and onwards. These systems offered incredible play features and made Technic sets feel like real machinery, but they are rarely included in modern Technic sets anymore because they're too expensive to produce. And I get it, pneumatics are complicated and add a lot to the cost of a set, but man, those old Technic sets with pneumatics were something special. But while we're talking about complex systems that are basically gone, let me show you the 12-volt train system that ended in 1991. This system had remote-controlled signals, points, and lights that you could automate. When LEGO switched to 9-volt trains, most of these electronic accessories were lost. Fans still miss the advanced automation that the 12-volt system offered, because it let you set up really complex train layouts that could run themselves. Now, you either have to use third-party products or just accept that your trains won't be as automated as they used to be. But let's move away from trains and talk about Star Wars for a second. Back in 2005, LEGO released the Ultimate Lightsaber Duel set, and it included battery-powered glowing lightsabers that you could activate by pressing the minifigure's head. How cool is that? You'd press down on the head and the lightsaber would actually light up, but they were discontinued, mostly because they only had a 3-hour battery life. And honestly, that makes a lot of sense. But Star Wars wasn't the only theme with light-up pieces. The Toa Inika sets from Bionicle in 2006 had light-up weapons with LEDs built in. You could press a button and the weapon would glow, and it was incredibly cool. But just like those lightsabers, these were discontinued due to battery shipping and cost issues. Bionicle fans still talk about how awesome these sets were, specifically because of those light-up weapons, and it's a shame that feature never came back. But if you think light-up weapons are cool, let me tell you about Exoforce sets from 2006 to 2008. These sets included light bricks connected to fiber optic cables that make the cockpits of mechs glow. It gave them this realistic powered up look that made them feel like they were actually running on energy. Modern mech sets don't have anything like this, and honestly, they feel a lot less impressive because of it. The fiber optics made Exoforce mechs stand out, and it's a feature that I wish LEGO would bring back for modern mech themes. But here's a light and sound brick that's become legendary for a different reason. The 2009 Grand Carousel set included a special sound brick that plays carousel music, and it was only used in that one set. Because of this, the brick sells for insanely high prices on Bricklink, and collectors go crazy trying to find one. It's one of those pieces that became valuable specifically because it's so rare and unique, and you can't get it anywhere else. But now, let me tell you about a theme that completely relied on technology and then lost everything when that technology was shut down. The Hidden Side theme ran from 2019 to 2020, and the sets were designed with rotating elements and colorful pieces that you were supposed to scan with an AR app for ghost hunting gameplay. The sets themselves were cool builds, but the whole gimmick was the app, and in 2023, LEGO discontinued it, which means all that interactive functionality is just gone forever. If you buy a Hidden Side set now, you're only getting half the experience because the AR gameplay is entirely inaccessible. Another theme that had something similar happen is the Nexo Knights theme. From 2016 to 2018, the sets had collectible power shield tiles that worked with an app, but since that app is completely gone now, there's no way to use them again. Around 3 years ago, someone on Reddit noticed that it got taken off the App Store. So I'm not exactly sure when the app got taken down, but I know for sure it's gone forever. Clearly, LEGO has a lot of discontinued tech features, but this next one made people more upset than ever before. LEGO Mindstorms was a programmable robotics platform that taught kids coding and engineering for decades. It was incredible for education, and hobbyists loved it because you could build custom robots and program them to do basically anything. But in 2022, LEGO discontinued Mindstorms in favor of Spike Prime, which is more education focused and less flexible for custom designs. Spike Prime is fine for classrooms, but hobbyists really miss Mindstorms because it gave you way more freedom to experiment and build whatever you wanted. But here's something that's happening right now that a lot of people are worried about. LEGO is actively trying to phase out paper instructions and move everything over to digital-only manuals. And to make things worse, they've already removed artwork from instruction covers, so now they're just generic white backgrounds instead of having cool themed artwork. Fans want physical manuals because it lets them disconnect from screens while building, and the artwork on the covers used to be part of the excitement of opening a new set. Now everything looks generic and boring, and if LEGO goes fully digital, that physical experience is just gone. But that isn't all, because LEGO's also trying to transition from plastic bags to paper bags. The new paper bags are just plain white with faint brick patterns on them. You can't see through them like you can with the plastic bags, so there's no more excitement of seeing all the colors through the bags when you open the box. But I'm still not done, because there's another thing that made opening sets less exciting, but this one happened a long time ago. LEGO used to include these small catalogs inside sets that showed you other sets in the theme or upcoming releases. You'd finish building your set, and then you could flip through the catalog and see all the other cool stuff you could get. But now it's mostly just QR codes or nothing at all, and honestly, it's not the same. I never even got one of these catalogs in a set. This is something that's been gone for a while, but I really wish they'd bring them back. But how many of these things did you already know about? Be sure to let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.